Ladies and gentlemen, we're always hearing about internet services in the cloud. We hear about how we can store data in the cloud. So does this mean that our data is being kept somewhere up in the sky? Does it mean that there's a satellite that stores our emails and documents? Is there some kind of aircraft or maybe a hot air balloon that keeps our information up there, hovering above us in the sky, in the clouds? Well, no, actually it will be much more appropriate to say that the internet is actually under our oceans. It's under our seas, really. There are about 300 cables that run under our oceans, and these cables are responsible for 99% of international data traffic. Now, of course, if you had to send internet data from Brussels to Paris, for example, you wouldn't need to use these cables. The cables being used to transfer this message would probably run underground, under our feet. If, on the other hand, you had to send a message from the stock exchange in New York to a group of stockbrokers in London, then your message would be sent via one of these underwater cables. So there are just 300 cables that are responsible for managing a huge amount of our internet traffic. If data needs to be sent from Tokyo to San Francisco, for example, it will go through one of these cables. If a message needs to be sent over the internet from Sydney to Santiago de Chile, it will go through one of these cables. So these cables really are the backbone of our internet. The cables that run under our seas are laid under the water, sometimes at astounding depths. For example, one cable that crosses the Pacific is deeper under the surface of the sea than Mount Everest is high. In order to lay one of these cables, a ship lowers a machine down to the seabed, and this machine digs a tiny groove in the ocean floor and places the cable into this small groove, and over time the cable is covered over with sand or other matter. Now, this technique sounds very simple and it is very effective, but it is sometimes vulnerable to problems. For example, the underwater cables that we use are not always earthquake proof. If a tremor hits an area under the sea, if a certain area is struck by an earthquake, the cables can sometimes be cut. Also, sea life has sometimes been known to cause a nuisance. Some cables have even been severed by sharks, because sharks have sometimes been known to bite into these cables. These cables are laid by private companies, and there have been some cases in which companies have tried to cut corners in order to make savings. So sometimes when you're sitting at home on your computer, you may notice it's taking a long time to load a web page, or maybe you're having difficulties talking to a friend over Skype. Well, maybe this is because there is trouble at sea. Maybe the cable under the ocean has been cut and the data has to be rerouted. Now, if I think of other potential problems that could arise with this system, well, I suppose there are many. For instance, these cables could become an element of cyber warfare. So just imagine if a country were at war with Australia. Now, I don't think anyone really plans on going to war with Australia anytime soon. Australia is quite a friendly country, really. But if a war were to break out between Australia and another country, well, Australia's adversary may decide that bombing isn't the easiest way of attacking the country. They may prefer to attack the Aussies by cutting their internet cables. They may decide to sever the cable that provides the link between Australia and the rest of the world. Given that Australia is an island, this would really leave it alone and isolated. Now, I'm not an engineer. I can't give you any more technical details about how these cables work. But I am very curious as to how technology works, and that's why I decided to write this speech. I had always wondered how messages get sent from one part of the world to another. So now that we're more enlightened on this topic, maybe next time you're surfing the web, you can spare a thought for those who work hard at sea to connect our world. Thank you.